In the silent outskirts of a rural town, a ruthless crew of burglars believes they've found a simple score, a solitary barn, cut off and seemingly unprotected. What they don't realize is that this is no ordinary barn. It's defended by a highly trained former Navy SEAL and his pack of disciplined wolves, all prepared to protect their land with deadly accuracy. What unfolds is a high-stakes confrontation of tactics, intelligence, and survival, where every decision matters and one wrong assumption can cost a life. On the remote edges of Gray Hollow, where dirt roads dissolve into thick forest, an aging barn stood worn by time, quiet, and apparently abandoned. But in Gray Hollow, appearances were rarely trustworthy. Locals said little about the barn's owner, a man known only as Kel Becker. To them, he was a withdrawn woodsman who sold firewood and repaired fences. They knew he lived alongside a small pack of wolves, rescued, trained, but never truly domesticated. What they didn't know was that Kel Becker hadn't always lived this life. 2 decades earlier, he had been Commander Becker, a legend within the Navy SEALs. His expertise lay in unconventional warfare, hostage recovery, and close-quarters combat. He led missions where backup was uncertain and failure was not an option. When his service ended, he vanished into the forest, far from commands, politics, and enemies. But the world has a way of tracking men like Becker. That night, it arrived as the Vargas Syndicate, a violent group known for high-risk robberies. They had been expanding into rural territory, stripping properties of valuables, vehicles, weapons, specialized gear. Their intelligence claimed this barn stored old tactical equipment, outdated, but valuable on the black market. They labeled it an easy hit. They never questioned why such gear was kept here, or who might be protecting it. At T0 to 00 hours, 3 unmarked SUVs crept down the gravel road with their headlights off. 6 men exited, armed with suppressed MP5s and tactical lights. They moved confidently, though without true discipline, mercenaries, not trained soldiers. Their leader, Damon Briggs, a mid-level operator with a habit of underestimating rural targets, delivered a brief command: fast entry, fast exit, no delays. If anyone was inside, shoot first. Briggs relied on speed and intimidation. His intel said the barn was rarely visited and that the owner was away on supply runs. What he didn't know was that Kel Becker was home and had been tracking them since they crossed the county line. Inside his cabin, Becker monitored a multi-layered security network, infrared sensors, pressure triggers, and motion detectors silently surrounding the property. He followed every movement of the syndicate. Amateurs, he muttered, taking a sip of black coffee. At his side, his wolves Kane, Rhea, and Ghost stood focused and calm, their training fully engaged. Becker reached for his comms. Alpha team, movement confirmed. Position set, static answered. Then a familiar voice: Mason, his former SEAL teammate, now a local mechanic and part-time lookout. Copy that, Commander. 3 clicks out, standing by. Becker smiled slightly. Retirement, it seemed, didn't last. His hand hovered over a switch, activating silent defenses, spike strips, signal jammers, and carefully placed diversion traps. Let's give them a proper welcome. The first mercenary forced the barn door. A soft click sounded, then it was too late. An overhead beam released, dropping a heavy metal cage that slammed down and sealed the entrance shut. The wolves growled, low and steady. Becker stepped forward, his voice cold. You picked the wrong barn. Panic rippled through the intruders. This wasn't in the plan. Briggs swore and ordered his team to spread out and find another exit, but the trap had already closed. Becker had spent years shaping this land into a controlled battlefield. Every escape route funneled intruders exactly where he wanted them. One of Briggs's men, a thin scout named Vance, approached a side door. The instant his foot crossed the threshold, a steel cable snapped tight around his ankle and hauled him upward, leaving him hanging helplessly. He fought wildly as his weapon clattered to the floor. Cut him down. Briggs shouted. As the team moved, Becker's voice echoed through the barn, amplified by hidden speakers. You're on my board now. Every move you make was planned. Briggs searched the rafters, trying to locate the source. Who are you? A ghost, Becker replied. The kind your employers thought was buried. Briggs forced a sneer, hiding the unease creeping in. We've got numbers. You're one man. Cal's voice stayed steady. One man is enough. I made sure of that. With a sharp whistle, Cal issued the command. From the darkness, the wolves surged forward, silent, fast, and terrifyingly synchronized. Kane, the largest, swept left, severing the team's retreat. Rhea, smaller and quicker, looped behind them, forcing the men toward narrow choke points. Ghost, pure white, slipped along the side. Moving with precise focus toward isolated targets, Briggs's men opened fire. But the wolves were trained to avoid clear sightlines, darting between cover with unreal agility. They weren't killing yet. They were wounding. Panic spread. Briggs's second-in-command, a hardened enforcer named Griggs, fired a burst at Kane, but the rounds tore into the barn wall as the wolf vanished behind stacked crates. In frustration, Griggs stumbled backward onto a pressure plate. Click! A flashbang exploded beside him, stunning and blinding. Griggs collapsed, disoriented. From his cabin, Cal observed calmly, his fingers moving across a custom-built control panel. He flipped another switch. Hidden vents flooded the barn with thick fog smoke mixed with a mild irritant that blurred vision and deepened confusion. The mercenaries' comms crackled with interference. Night vision optics faltered in the haze. Their formation unraveled. Briggs snarled, realizing they'd walked straight into a layered ambush. Stay tight. Weapons up. He's just one guy with tricks, the barn's old loudspeaker hummed. You think this is about tricks? You broke into a place designed for war. Then the wolves struck. Kane lunged, clamping onto a mercenary's arm and ripping the weapon free. Rhea swept low, knocking another man off his feet before vanishing into the fog. Ghost circled Briggs, silent and deliberate. Briggs swung wildly, the white blur always just out of reach. Cal's voice cut through the chaos. Drop your weapons. Surrender now, or we escalate. Briggs snarled, clinging to the mission. You'll have to kill us. A brief pause. Then Cal replied, cold and precise. Not yet, but you'll beg me to. Briggs's pulse thundered as the wolves tightened their circle. His team scattered, shaken, and separated was no longer the hunter. They were prey. Vance, still dangling in the snare, screamed for help as his teammates pulled away, scrambling to regroup. Griggs, half blind from the flashbang, staggered toward the center of the barn, his weapon shaking in his grip. Briggs forced his breathing under control. Form up. Regain control. Perimeter. Now. Regroup at the truck. We move together. But as his men tried to retreat, another layer of Becker's defenses triggered. Steel panels reinforced with hydraulic locks slammed down over the barn's ground-level windows, sealing them in. One man, Perez, sprinted toward the rear service door only to activate a snap trap. Nails punched through the soles of his boots, pinning him in place. His rifle slipped from his hands as he screamed. Perez's cum buzzed with Briggs's voice. Leave him. Push forward. Move. The wolves pressed again, herding the men into blind zones. From his cabin, Cal watched the panic unfold like a chessboard collapsing into forced checkmate. Mason. They're boxed in. Mason's voice crackled back. Copy. Perimeter secure. Eyes on their vehicles. Want me to disable them? Not yet, Cal replied. Let them think there's an exit. I want Briggs to make the mistake. Cal stood and strapped on his sidearm a worn but lethal M4501 from his service days. He slung a suppressed submachine gun across his chest and slid a hunting knife into his belt. His wolves fell in beside him as he left the cabin and disappeared into the tree line. Inside the barn, Briggs knew they couldn't hold. Vance, Perez, get up. We're moving now. Vance, suspended and panicking, couldn't free himself. Perez's boot was locked tight, his screams fading. Briggs scanned the smoke-filled barn and realized it. Becker's bleeding us dry. One by one, he keyed his comms. New plan. We breached the east wall. Stacked charges. 2 remaining men pulled breaching explosives and began fixing them to the barn's support beams. Desperation was overtaking caution, but Cal had already anticipated it. As the charges were set, Kane moved silently through the rafters above. Tracking every motion, Cal's voice echoed once more through the speakers colder than before. Go ahead, detonate the wall, Cal said. You'll bring the entire structure down on yourselves. Briggs hesitated, sweat streaking his face. You're bluffing. Cal's voice never changed. What do you think happens when you destabilize 80-year-old supports reinforced with tension cables? I designed the failure points. You might open an exit, but the barn will collapse on you. One of Briggs's men faltered. Boss, what if he's telling the truth? Briggs clenched his weapon. He's lying. Set it off. The wolves pulled back as Briggs triggered the explosives. The east wall gave way, but exactly as Cal warned, the structural tension snapped violently. Debris thundered down. Support beams screamed. Half the roof collapsed. burying one mercenary beneath shattered timber and dust. Briggs shouted in fury, hauling his last standing man clear of the wreckage. Cal's voice echoed again. You were warned. Briggs's defiance cracked as he realized this wasn't a fight, it was an execution, methodical and inevitable. He staggered through the settling dust, dragging Mills toward the remnants of the east wall. Behind them, Perez's screams faded, pinned and abandoned. Vance still dangled helplessly from the snare, swaying as debris crashed around him. This was no longer an operation. It was a massacre. Briggs keyed his comms in panic. Extraction moved the trucks to the east side. Now. Nothing. He tried again, harsher. Alpha team, respond. Where are you? A voice answered, but not his. Vehicles are unavailable. Briggs's blood chilled. On the monitor in Cal's cabin, Mason knelt beside the syndicate's SUVs, calmly slicing tires and tearing out ignition wiring. One vehicle smoked faintly, its engine destroyed by a small incendiary charge planted minutes earlier. Mason's voice came through smooth and almost amused. Your rides are done. Might want to call someone. Briggs's eyes darted as he realized the comms had been jammed the moment they entered the property. Even if he tried, no help was coming. You're trapped, Briggs, Cal said. Your men are down. Your plan is falling apart. All that's left is your decision: surrender or bleed out. Mills shook beside him. Boss, we can't stay. Briggs shoved him forward. Head for the tree line. We'll split up and cut the fence. He can't track both of us. Mills bolted into the woods, breath tearing from his chest. Briggs sprinted the opposite way, veering west toward the creek, hoping the water would erase his trail. But Cal had already planned for it. Kane shadowed Mills, matching his frantic pace with cold precision, herding him toward a dead end, a concealed ravine with a sheer drop, a kill zone hidden by brush. Mills skidded to a stop, gasping, his weapon shaking as Kane emerged. He raised his MP5. It clicked empty. Forgotten in the chaos, Kane's low growl was the last sound before the wolf struck, slamming him down. No killing, only controlled incapacitation. That was the training. On the other flank, Cal moved in on Briggs himself, threading through the trees with the same disciplined steps that once cleared enemy compounds. His suppressed SMG stayed low, his eyes mapping every escape route. Mason's voice came through the earpiece. Mills is neutralized. Kane's holding. Good, Cal replied. Briggs is mine. Briggs crashed toward the creek, breath ragged, branches tearing at him. His boots splashed into the water. He turned downstream, trusting the current to hide his scent and erase his tracks, but Cal knew this ground too well. 10 meters ahead, Ghost stood motionless at the creek's narrowest point, silent, pale, blocking the way. Briggs raised his weapon, then hesitated. Ghost didn't move, just watched. Then Cal's voice came again, closer now, steady and cold. There's no move left, Briggs. Briggs spun, weapon jerking upward, and found Cal on the embankment, gun leveled and unwavering. You think you're some kind of hero? Briggs spat. You're one man. Cal's eyes never shifted. I was never alone. Ghost growled softly as Kane and Rhea emerged behind Briggs, sealing the circle. Briggs's weapon dipped. His hands shook. You going to kill me? He asked. Cal's voice was ice. Not yet. You're going to deliver a message. Briggs's breathing slowed, not from calm, but acceptance. He looked at the wolves closing and Ghost ahead. Kane and Rhea flanking. There was nowhere left to run. Cal stepped forward, every movement deliberate. His suppressed SMG still trained squarely on Briggs's chest. His voice cut through the standoff with surgical precision. You came here believing you were the hunters. You're leaving as my courier. Briggs clenched his jaw. I don't carry messages. A brief, cold smile touched Cal's face. You do now. He motioned toward the ground with his weapon. Drop it. Briggs hesitated, then let the gun fall into the shallow creek. He straightened, but fatigue and fear showed in his posture. You're going to tell Vargas this wasn't an accident, Cal said, moving in a slow circle as the wolves mirrored him, tightening the ring. You'll tell him Grey Hollow is off limits. No crews, no smugglers, no watching this town. If he sets foot out here again, I won't be this lenient. Briggs's jaw twitched. You think he'll care? You think you frighten him? Cal's stare hardened. I'm not trying to frighten him. I'm here to send him back in pieces if he's foolish enough to test me. Briggs weighed pride against survival. Survival 1. Cal to Mason. Status. Mason's voice came through. Vance is down, secured. Perez is stabilized, but can't move. Mills is quiet. They're ready. Copy. Cal's eyes never left Briggs. You're taking your men. You'll leave in whatever trucks still run. You'll tell Vargas this job failed because he underestimated a quiet town. Briggs spat into the creek defiant, but beaten. And if he doesn't believe me? Cal answered evenly. Tell him to send more. For the first time, Briggs truly saw at the steel in Cal's gaze, the resolve of a man who didn't bluff, didn't hesitate, didn't stop. This wasn't just victory. It was a layered warning. Briggs turned toward the tree line where Mason had gathered the remaining syndicate members. Mason, arms folded, tossed him the keys. 2 trucks will run, he said. Barely. Briggs glared, said nothing, and limped toward his wounded men. As they loaded into the battered SUVs, the weight of the night settled over them. Shame, failure, fear. They had crossed paths with something far more dangerous than expected. A man who could turn terrain into a personal battlefield. Cal watched them depart, wolves at his side. Mason walked up, shaking his head. You really think they'll stay away? Cal answered with certainty. No, they'll send someone else smarter, better equipped. He knelt, running a hand through Kane's fur. Let them. We'll be ready. Mason cracked a dry grin. So what now? Cal surveyed the tree line, the scarred barn, and the fading headlights. Now we rebuild, he said, standing. And we reinforce. By dawn, the syndicate's convoy was gone, limping back toward the city with their wounded and their damaged pride. But the deeper scars were on Briggs. His failure would echo upward. In Gray Hollow, Cal and Mason immediately began repairs, restoring the barn with the same efficiency they once used to fortify combat outposts. For them, preparation wasn't fear, it was procedure. You think Vargas moves fast? Mason asked, hammering steel braces into place. Cal wiped sweat from his brow and glanced at the newly aligned motion sensors. Vargas isn't patient. He'll take this personally, which helps. Anger makes men sloppy. Cal studied his security feeds. He wasn't just expecting retaliation. He was shaping the battlefield for it. Across town, Sheriff Grace Harlow arrived in her dusty cruiser. She had always suspected Cal's quiet life hid more than it showed. You kicked a hornet's nest, she said, stepping out with crossed arms. I've got reports of syndicate vehicles scouting county roads. They're moving quicker than you thought. Cal didn't react. Good. I want them here before they're ready. Grace raised an eyebrow. You're baiting them? Cal nodded slightly. Gray Hollow's the last stop before open wilderness. If they fail here, they won't push farther west. She looked over the reinforced barn, the upgraded cameras, the fresh tripwires Mason was threading into the brush. You're not planning to hold this place by yourself, are you? Cal's expression stayed calm, but his answer revealed everything. I'm not alone. By midday, 2 more arrived. Reed, a former sniper now running a nearby hunting lodge, and Elena, once a combat medic and now a veterinarian who'd quietly helped train and care for the wolves. No briefings were needed, no speeches, just understanding. Reed studied the defensive grid on Cal's map. You've turned the whole property into a kill zone. Cal traced fallback routes, choke points, and covered angles with his finger. It's not enough to drive them back, Cal said. I want them contained. I want them boxed in. Elena set a medical case down. This will escalate quickly. They won't send another cleanup crew. They'll deploy shock units. Mason nodded. Heavy weapons, possibly armored vehicles. Cal locked the final panel on the barn's side entrance. Let them. For the next 12 hours, the team reinforced their defenses. Reed established long-range fallback positions and mapped sniper lanes. Mason assembled improvised claymores with remote detonators. Elena worked with Cal to stock emergency caches and strengthen the tunnels beneath the barn for rapid repositioning. Throughout it all, the wolves remained vigilant, focused, synchronized, responding to Cal's signals. When night fell, a drone's infrared feed detected movement along the property's edge. Multiple heat signatures, multiple vehicles. Vargas had sent a real force this time. Cal's expression hardened as he keyed the comms. They're here. Take positions. Lock and load. Mason replied without hesitation. Let's make it hurt. Cal's answer was quiet. We don't push them back tonight. We erase them. The convoy advanced in tight formation. 3 armored SUVs, a tactical van, and a light assault truck fitted with mounted weapons. No headlights. Encrypted comms. No unnecessary chatter. This wasn't Briggs's reckless crew. This was Vargas's response unit. The squad leader, Anton Rohr, former special forces turned mercenary commander, was a professional. He believed in disciplined execution and overwhelming force, not intimidation. Stepping from the lead vehicle, he scanned the perimeter with practiced precision. His men spread out instantly, deploying jammers and disabling exterior cameras with exact efficiency. We sweep. We secure. Then we burn it down, Roar ordered. Keller, lock the perimeter. Intel says he's using wolves for defense. Roar gave a thin, humorless smirk. We have counters. His team activated low-frequency sonic deterrents meant to disorient animals. They expected the wolves to scatter. They were wrong. Inside the barn's tactical hub, Cal and his team monitored the live drone feeds. Cal's face stayed calm. They're good, Mason muttered, tightening his grip on his rifle. Not amateurs. They think they're hunting, Cal replied evenly. Let's correct that. Elena initiated the wolf signal's subtle auditory cues that overrode the sonic devices. The wolves held position, waiting. Let them breach the outer barn, Cal ordered. We strike at phase 2. Reed's voice came in from his sniper nest 100 yards out. Overwatch established. 2 north, 3 south. Main assault element moving your way. Copy, Cal said. On my mark. Roar's unit advanced methodically, clearing the outer barn with textbook precision. Doors were breached cleanly. Flashbangs detonated in empty spaces. Keller radioed in. No contact. He's gone. Roar scanned the cleared structure, unease creeping in. Too quiet. Too clean. Lock down the perimeter. Bring the van forward. As the tactical van rolled toward the inner barn, Keller's team deployed thermal scanners, searching for heat signatures. What they didn't know was that Cal had already rerouted thermal sources, decoy rooms filled with residual heat from portable blankets and chemical packs. The scanners pinged. False positives. 3 life signs, Keller reported. Northeast quadrant. Roar stacked his team and breached. Empty, nothing but thermal blankets and triggered noise emitters. From his control board, Cal initiated the next stage. Execute. Mason detonated the buried charges. A line of concealed explosives erupted beneath the van, flipping it onto its side and engulfing the forward assault teams in fire and debris. Reed's suppressed rifle fired in sync, dropping 2 operatives scrambling for cover. The wolves surged. Kane and Rhea split wide, flanking surviving units through the fog-laced tree line. Ghost streaked past the flames, disabling a panicked soldier with a precise strike to his weapon arm. Roar slammed to the ground, shouting commands. Regroup. Establish firing lanes. Neutralize the animals. But his men couldn't gain footing. Mason and Cal pinned them with overlapping fire, driving them exactly where Cal intended, into the inner kill box. Cal moved with mechanical precision, shifting between barricades, laying down cover fire, and issuing sharp commands to the wolves as the trap closed. Weapons hot. Sweep left. Elena directed the wolves along their flanking routes, her earpiece buzzing with rapid-fire updates. Reed's voice cut through the static. 2 down. Keller's wounded but moving south. Copy, Cal replied, his tone cold. Keep pressure on Roar. Pinned and outmaneuvered, Roar grasped the brutal reality. This wasn't simple home defense. It was a calculated ambush, executed by someone who had transformed the battlefield into a living system, and that system was dismantling them piece by piece. Smoke and fire swallowed the area as the tactical van burned, throwing erratic shadows across the barn walls. Roar's unit was collapsing, coms jammed, teams isolated, lines severed with clinical efficiency. Grinding his teeth, Roar switched to hand signals, signaling the 3 remaining operators at his side. Regroup, fall back, break west. But Cal was already ahead. Mason's voice came in overcomes. West routes closed. Steel panels dropped 5 minutes ago. They're trapped. Reed followed immediately. They've got one possible lane north. I've got eyes, Cal answered calmly. Let them take it. On cue, Kane and Rhea intensified pressure from the east, relentless and precise. Ghost slipped into the northern corridor, driving the fleeing operators toward the final funnel, a false exit aligned perfectly with Reed's sightline. Roar's team didn't realize it, but the only remaining path was the one Cal had built for them. Amid the chaos, Keller, the second in command, limped toward the northern exit, dragging a dazed rifleman behind him. Reed tracked them through his scope, breathing slow and controlled. Targets in the corridor. Permission? Cal's response was detached. Drop the escort. Let Keller go. 1 suppressed shot. Clean. The rifleman fell instantly. Keller, alone and panicked, pushed forward, hauling his injured leg. He had become the message bearer. Roar shouted over the noise. Keller, hold. We're filing. No response. Keller ran. Roar's frustration flared, but discipline held. He shoved his last remaining operator toward the south gate, the only escape he believed remained, prep grenades. We pushed through. The moment they charged the southern corridor, Cal triggered the final trap. The ground gave way. An improvised pit opened beneath them, lined with welded rebar and crushed vehicle frames built to disable, not kill. Roar's last man vanished into it with a strangled scream. His leg pinned in twisted steel, Roar barely rolled clear, slamming into the ground. His weapon lost. Then the wolves were there. Kane emerged first, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest. Rhea cut in from the left. Ghost circled behind. Roar's instincts screamed. He reached for his sidearm. Cal's boot pinned his wrist to the earth. Cal looked down at him, steady and unshaken. You're competent, Roar, but you made one mistake. Roar glared up. What? You thought this was an operation? Cal leaned closer, voice sharp. It wasn't. This was a warning. Cal stripped the sidearm away and stepped back. You'll take your man. You'll leave. And you'll tell Vargas to stand down. Roar spat blood into the dirt. You think he'll back off because of this? Cal's eyes were cold steel. He won't. That's why he gets a choice: pull back, or I dismantle his entire network. And you'll be first. Roar's jaw tightened. He understood. This wasn't bravado. Cal meant every word. Cal keyed his comms. Mason, release Keller. He's got a message to deliver. Mason's dry reply came back. Done. Cal gave Roar one final look. You're dismissed. Without another word, Cal turned away, his wolves falling in behind him, leaving Roar to drag his wounded operator toward the lone remaining vehicle. The fight was finished, but the war had only begun. In the city's core, behind glass towers and layered security, Marcus Vargas sat in silence, replaying the fragmented debrief Keller had just delivered. The man shook, eyes wide, voice hollow, recounting the night in broken phrases filled with disbelief and fear. He wasn't just defending the barn, Keller said. He knew we were coming. He was already inside our heads. Keller described the wolves, the traps, the precision, the sniper who spared his life, the deliberate decision to let him walk. Vargas leaned back, fingers steepled. So he knew you'd come. He knew we'd escalate. He knew you'd survive to deliver this. Keller nodded stiffly. Vargas's jaw flexed. I sent professionals. You came back shattered. Roar entered the room, limping but composed. His face was hard, but his eyes carried reluctant respect. Vargas turned toward him. Your assessment, Vargas said. Roar didn't soften it. He's not a threat. He's a fortress. The entire property is weaponized. We were 3 moves behind the moment we crossed the tree line. Vargas tapped his fingers lightly on the polished table. You've faced hardened targets before. Not like this, Roar admitted. This wasn't simple defense. It was engineered failure. He wanted us alive. He wanted us to run. Vargas's thin smile returned. So Becker's playing the long game. Roar's pause said everything. We can take him, but not with shock teams. Not with mercenaries. Vargas rose and walked to the panoramic window overlooking his empire. No, this is personal now. His eyes narrowed, calculating. I underestimated a farmer. He turned, fixing Roar with a steady stare. Let's fix that. Roar stiffened. Authorization? Vargas's answer was final. All of it. Deploy the black unit. Full assets. Full spectrum engagement. No more soft entries. This time, we burn the whole town if we have to. Roar hesitated. The locals won't stand down. They know Becker. They'll fight with him. Vargas shrugged. Then they burn too. As Roar left to mobilize the next phase, Vargas allowed himself a single dark smile. No survivors this time. Back in Gray Hollow, Cal reviewed satellite intercepts Mason had pulled from a local signal relay. Syndicate traffic was surging, encrypted, but traceable. Something major was coming. They're pulling heavy assets, Mason said, sliding a tablet across the table. Looks like the black unit. Off book. Full assault. Cal's expression didn't change. Timeline? 48 hours. Maybe less. Reed adjusted his rifle sling. Enough time to deepen the lines. Elena, checking supply caches, looked up. We'll need the town. Volunteers. Spotters. Extra hands. They'll come. Cal said without hesitation, and they did. Over the next hours, townspeople arrived: farmers, hunters, off-duty deputies, men and women who owed Cal for quiet favors, unseen protection, unspoken debts. They didn't need persuading. They brought weapons, tools, and resolve. Gray Hollow remembered who had stood for it. Cal spread out the updated battle map. This time, we hold together, Mason grinned. And we don't let them leave. Cal's voice settled into that familiar surgical calm. This time, we finish it. The next 40 hours in Gray Hollow felt like the pause before a storm. Cal's barn was no longer just a stronghold, it was becoming the core of a community defense network. The people weren't trained soldiers, but they were hunters, ranchers, retired lawmen, and former service members who had faded quietly into this forgotten town. When Cal called, they answered. Inside the tactical hub, Cal, Mason, Reed, and Elena mapped layered defense zones, aligning likely syndicate approach routes with the town's natural choke points: creek beds, narrow roads, dense forest. This isn't just about protecting the barn, Cal told the volunteers. We defend the town, every road, every family. We hold until they realize Gray Hollow costs too much to take. A grizzled hunter named Gabe, famous for tracking elk across brutal terrain, stepped forward. Give me a team. I'll lace the woods with steel jaws and spike pits. Cal nodded. You've got it. Sheriff Grace Harlow organized a volunteer roadblock unit at the southern pass, reinforcing abandoned cabins into fallback positions. Mason coordinated with local radio operators, setting up encrypted mesh comms to bypass syndicate jammers. Short range, low power, he told Cal. Hard to trace. Reed scouted sniper nests beyond the tree line, plotting overlapping kill zones. They'll bring armored trucks. I'll need the 50 set on the ridge. You'll have it, Cal replied. Elena stockpiled medical supplies, converted an old feed shed into a triage station, and deployed the wolves to carry supply packs across the field. They're not just for fighting, she said. They're for what comes after. If we win, everyone gets patched up. Kane, Rhea, and Ghost moved with uncanny awareness, syncing naturally with the evolving defense plan. They weren't just Cal's wolves anymore. They belonged to Gray Hollow. Every position, every layer, every fallback route was built to ensure the syndicate paid for every step forward. By the second day, drone scouts detected movement along the southern ridge for armored vehicles. 3 tactical teams, heavy weapons inbound. Mason's drone feed caught the black insignia on their gear unmarked, faces concealed, moving with ruthless precision. They brought professionals this time, Mason muttered, tightening his gloves. Good, Cal replied. Professionals bleed the same. He keyed the town-wide comms. All units, final positions. Phase 1 is live. Stay in your lanes. Call your shots. Cover your brothers. Across Gray Hollow, volunteers locked weapons, sealed their sectors, and sank into the stillness that precedes combat. Cal holstered his sidearm, slung his suppressed SMG, and glanced down at Kane, seated calmly at his side. Ready to work, boy? Kane's low growl was answer enough. Mason's voice buzzed in. They're moving. Cal's reply was steady, cold. Then let's make sure they don't leave. The moon hung low over Gray Hollow, casting long shadows across the rough terrain. Syndicate assault teams in black advanced with lethal discipline, armored vehicles rumbling softly along gravel roads as they neared the outskirts. Tactical lights swept the tree line while encrypted radios hissed with clipped commands. From sniper nests high on the ridges, Reed stayed locked into his thermal optics. Pale silhouettes moved through the darkness. His voice cut in, calm but urgent. Contact at 300 meters. Moving north along the creek bed. 3 on foot flanking left. Cal's earpiece buzzed nonstop as Mason coordinated from the hub, relaying spotter reports from across town. Volunteers tightened grips on rifles, shotguns, even hunting bows. Civilian skill sharpened into discipline. Hold, Cal ordered. No engagement until my call. Kane, Rhea, and Ghost slipped through the undergrowth like phantoms, silent sentinels shaped by training and command. Ears twitched, eyes burned with focus. Then Mason's voice broke the calm. Drones confirm movement at the southeast access point. Breach team deploying charges. Cal's finger rested near the trigger of his SMG. Let them come. We're ready. The silence shattered with a thunderous crack. A controlled blast erupted beneath a fallen log, earth and splinters tearing skyward. The claymores Mason had buried days earlier detonated beneath the breach. Team screams followed as operatives were thrown off balance. Reed fired twice. 2 bodies dropped before they could recover. Cal moved instantly. Kane, flank left, cut off retreat. Rhea, shadow their rear. Ghost, with me, clear stragglers. the wolves executed flawlessly. Kane burst from the left, driving stunned mercenaries into kill zones. Rhea flowed behind them, precise and efficient. Ghost slipped through the shadows, disarming and disabling with lethal grace. The syndicate's disciplined advance unraveled. Panic flashed as they realized this wasn't a raid, it was a trap. From a nearby command post, Roar barked orders, voice tight but controlled. Fall back to secondary perimeter. Suppressive fire. Cal anticipated it. Mason East charges. The ground shook as the narrow bridge collapsed, cutting off retreat. Vehicles screeched to a halt. Trapped. Exposed. Outmaneuvered. Roar swore softly. They've boxed us in. No exit. Cal advanced, the wolves pacing beside him like living shadows. His voice cut across the coms, cold and final. You wanted a war. Welcome to Grey Hollow. The night was far from over. The battlefield had become a deadly chessboard beneath the dark sky. Syndicate forces, once confident, were now disoriented, caught inside Grey Hollow's layered defenses. The terrain itself had become a weapon. Every route, every shadow, a calculated threat from the barn's fortified tower. Mason watched the drone feeds as the syndicate scrambled to reorganize. They're forming a defensive perimeter near the creek bed, he reported. Looks like they're trying to hold that line. Cal nodded, muscles drawn tight, ready to spring. Good, let them dig in. That makes them predictable. From his ridge position, Reed tightened his grip on the sniper rifle. His voice was low, steady. I'm set. The creek bed is wide open from here. Standing by for your signal. Across the town, volunteers and sharpshooters settled into their positions, faces hard with resolve. Elena moved quickly among them, checking supplies, wrapping minor wounds, calming shaken hands. Fight smart, she reminded them. Hold fire until you're sure. Along the perimeter, Kane, Rhea, and Ghost patrolled silently, ears tuned for movement beyond the syndicate's newly formed lines. Inside the syndicate's hastily assembled camp, Roar's frustration simmered beneath forced discipline. Their assault had been shredded by one man, his wolves, and a battlefield shaped against them. Supplies were thinning. Casualties were mounting. The pressure was unmistakable. Cal's voice came over the coms one last time before the push. All units, lock targets. This is where we drive them off our land. The first shots cracked through the air, precise, controlled fire from Reed's nest. 2 syndicate operators dropped instantly. Mason's teams followed with coordinated suppressive fire, herding the enemy into kill zones seeded with improvised explosives. The wolves struck with ruthless precision, driving the syndicate into disarray. Tearing apart formations and morale alike, Roar ordered a desperate counterattack, but it came too late. The syndicate was bleeding. Grey Hollow's defenders advanced with every synchronized strike. Cal moved through the chaos like a shadow, methodical, calm, directing each element with the certainty of a commander shaped by too many wars. Both distant and personal. As dawn crept over the ruined landscape, the syndicate force collapsed, shattered, rooted, broken in body and spirit. Grey Hollow stood. Morning light revealed the full cost of the night's siege. Burned out vehicles, splintered trees, scorched earth, wreckage scattered like the aftermath of open war. The sharp smell of smoke mingled with damp forest air as the town finally released the tension it had held for hours. Cal walked the field deliberately, stepping over debris and spent casings. His face was calm, etched with the weight of battles survived. Around him, volunteers and townsfolk, farmers, hunters, off-duty deputies worked without pause, tending the wounded with hands that had never expected to hold rifles, yet now moved with steady care. Mason joined Cal, wiping dirt and sweat from his face. They're finished, he said quietly. Vargas' black unit is broken. They're pulling out before we close the net. Cal scanned the horizon, alert, unyielding. Any prisoners? Mason pointed toward a shallow trench near the barn. Several syndicate operatives lay bound, guarded by armed locals. Keller was among them, clutching his injured leg, eyes sharp despite the pain. Cal approached him slowly, meeting his gaze. You'll tell Vargas this isn't over. Grey Hollow doesn't negotiate with threats. We prepare. We fight back. Keller managed a bitter smile, pain and humiliation clear. He'll remember you. Cal's voice was quiet, each word cutting clean. Good, that's the point. Nearby, Sheriff Grace Harlow addressed the exhausted crowd. We held tonight, but don't think this is the last time. We stay alert. We stay ready. Elena continued, moving among the injured, organizing care, rotations, and perimeter watches. Her combat medics calm steadying those still shaken, Reed returned to his sniper perch, eyes tracking the thinning enemy convoy, retreating down winding roads. He kept his rifle trained until the last black SUV vanished. Kane, Rhea, and Ghost stood beside Cal, silent, watchful. Cal knelt and ran a hand through Kane's fur. "We held," he murmured. "But it's not finished." As the sun climbed higher, washing the battered town in gold, Grey Hollow finally breathed again. For the moment, peace had been taken back. But Cal's thoughts were already racing forward, tracing the next inevitable moves. This was a war fought in shadows and patience, where every win was temporary, and Cal was prepared for what followed. The sun climbed over Grey Hollow beneath a muted sky, exposing a town scarred by conflict. The barn, once an unremarkable outbuilding on the edge of a quiet rural place, now stood battered and hardened. A fortress shaped by siege and stubborn defense. Cal moved slowly through the streets, eyes sharp despite the fatigue carved into his face. He returned nods and quiet words of thanks from neighbors who had once seen him as nothing more than a solitary farmer. Now they looked at him differently.